Imagine the scene. You stand face to face with someone who wants to challenge you. Not tomorrow, not later, but right now. There is no backup coming, no easy way out, no miracle waiting on the horizon. In this moment, everything comes down to one simple truth. The real battleground isn't outside you. It's inside your mind. Fear tightens your chest. Your heartbeat begins to rise. Your instincts tell you to react. But then, another possibility appears. The possibility of remaining calm, unshaken, unaffected by the noise around you, as steady as a mountain beneath a violent storm. The Stoics believe that a person who can govern their inner world becomes far harder to control from the outside. And in the next few minutes, you'll discover how to remain composed under pressure, not by luck, but by choice. The ancient Stoics understood conflict better than most. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire surrounded by chaos, yet repeatedly reminded himself to keep his mind clear and prepared. Seneca lived through political danger and constant uncertainty, yet taught that insults, pressure, and fear do not have to control the person who commands their own thoughts. Epictetus, once a slave, reminded his students that true freedom begins inside the mind. Their teachings aren't simply abstract philosophy. They are practical principles for dealing with pressure, intimidation, criticism, and difficult situations. They show you how to remain composed when everything around you seems designed to break your focus. And when you understand these principles deeply, you can enter difficult situations with the quiet confidence of someone who refuses to be easily rattled. The first principle is this: think less about yourself and observe more about the world around you. The Stoics understood that ego can become our first enemy. The moment you take everything personally, you become reactive. You stop observing and start defending. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that an insult has no power unless you give it meaning. When you detach from your ego, the attack loses much of its emotional force. In a difficult situation, detachment becomes strength. Instead of reacting, you observe. Instead of immediately defending yourself, you think. Instead of allowing emotion to control the moment, you create distance. Remember, the situation does not determine your worth. Your response reveals your control. The person who remains calm can think clearly while everyone else is being pulled around by emotion. The second principle is this: fixation can become the path to defeat. The Stoics warned against becoming too rigid. Seneca compared wisdom to a sailor who adjusts to changing winds. When you become obsessed with one specific outcome, your thinking becomes narrow, and narrow thinking creates vulnerability. Release that fixation, and your mind becomes flexible. You begin noticing possibilities that you couldn't see before. If someone expects anger, you can offer calm. If someone expects an emotional reaction, you can pause. If a conversation is going nowhere, you can change direction. Flexibility can prevent a situation from becoming worse long before emotions reach their peak. Rigidity often looks like strength, but sometimes it's simply fear wearing a stronger mask. The Stoic mind is not rigid. It is adaptable, like water. It moves around obstacles instead of wasting all its energy trying to destroy them. And if these ideas are helping you build a calmer and stronger mindset, consider subscribing to Stoic Spring. By doing so, you're building a daily habit of protecting your inner peace and developing greater emotional maturity. Over time, that practice can create real calm when you need it most. The third principle is this: there is more than one path to the top of the mountain. Epictetus taught that the most important thing within your control is your response. Everything else can take countless directions. A confrontation is not always a narrow tunnel with only one exit. It's more like a landscape filled with different paths. Sometimes strength means speaking clearly. Sometimes strength means waiting. And sometimes strength means walking away. Leaving a situation isn't weakness when it protects your peace and prevents unnecessary conflict. In an argument, silence can accomplish more than shouting ever could. In a difficult conversation, a small compromise can sometimes create a better outcome later. Once you understand that alternatives always exist, you stop allowing someone else's expectations to control your decisions. You stop simply reacting. You begin choosing. And that's a major difference. The fourth principle is this: understand one thing deeply, and you'll begin to understand many things. The Stoics studied human behavior with remarkable honesty. They understood that when you recognize the roots of human behavior, you can often recognize the patterns that follow. Many confrontations follow familiar patterns. Anger can hide fear. Insults can hide insecurity. Aggressive behavior can sometimes hide a desperate need for control. When you recognize these patterns, you stop being surprised by them. And when you're no longer surprised, you become much harder to destabilize. Calm becomes easier because the situation no longer feels completely unpredictable. Pay attention to tone, posture, hesitation, changes in someone's voice, the intensity of their words. People often reveal more than they realize. This awareness gives you something extremely valuable: foresight. And foresight creates composure. The fifth principle is this: you respond according to how you train. The Stoics train their minds in the same way an athlete trains through repetition. Marcus Aurelius regularly reflected on adversity so that difficult moments wouldn't completely surprise him. Epictetus encouraged his students to practice restraint in ordinary conversations so they could remain composed when pressure increased. Calm isn't simply luck. Calm is conditioning. If you never practice staying steady when you're annoyed, how can you expect to remain steady when pressure becomes intense? If a small inconvenience immediately makes you panic, how will you think clearly when a serious challenge appears? Every difficult moment can become practice for the next one. When someone provokes you and you choose steadiness, you strengthen your discipline. When someone pressures you and you take a breath instead of reacting, you reinforce your self-control. Little by little, you teach your mind that it doesn't have to obey every emotional impulse. And that is where real strength begins. The essence of Stoic confrontation is simple. The outside world becomes less powerful over you when you stop allowing your inner world to control you. If you stop taking everything personally, you become harder to shake. If you stop becoming obsessed with one outcome, you become more flexible. If you recognize that there are always different paths, you become more strategic. If you understand human behavior, you become harder to manipulate. And if you train your mind every day, you become increasingly resilient. Most people live in reaction. They respond before thinking. They become overwhelmed because they never learned how to create space between an event and their response. But in a world full of people reacting emotionally, the person who remains calm stands apart. So the next time someone challenges your patience, don't rush. Don't let fear decide for you. Don't let anger speak for you. Take a breath. Observe what is happening. Then choose your response carefully. Because the moment you regain control of yourself, you regain control of the moment. Thank you for watching. And if you want to continue building wisdom, discipline, and inner strength, subscribe to Stoic Spring. Your life begins to change when you develop the habit of protecting your peace, controlling your reactions, and becoming more emotionally mature. I'll see you in the next one.